While the curtain calls for what we've come to know as Black History Month, the Seattle Opera is helping usher the European art form into a new age of expression with a production composed by a Black man, a first in its 61-year history. It's called X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. It's the work of Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Anthony Davis, who told me it took another Black man's death to bring his production back to life. As the sun casts its light onto McCaw Hall in downtown Seattle,
Aisle H is up these stairs and that direction. Have a good time.
a storm is brewing inside.
Good evening. Welcome to the opera.
Let's peel back the layers. Who is Leah Hawkins as an operatic singer? How would you describe yourself?
Oh man, that's a great question. You know, because I was telling someone that I feel like I've been doing this so long. I feel like I've been pursuing a career in singing my entire life, but I'm just now finding who I am as an artist.
This time it's taking center stage as not one but two leading characters in X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. Playing both Betty Shabazz, Malcolm's wife, and who you see here, Louise Little, Malcolm's mother.
The story that's told is just, she had a mental breakdown, period. People move on, right? Mental breakdown, she's crazy. She's a Black crazy woman. Does that mean something to you that that's what it could be perceived like?
I suppose that's what's hard about it, because you don't get to see her full self.
But you can't help but hear the full bellows of the beginning of a complex story, both on stage and off.
I think the idea we were doing Malcolm X was really controversial.
Pulitzer Prize-winning composer Anthony Davis is the man behind the music.
2024, what does this opera mean to you right now?
It was everything to me because, you know, it was my first opera, first of all, when I wrote it back in the 80s. And it was my introduction, really, to the whole art form.
Do you feel like the Arts and Culture Society was ready for X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X at that time?
It was pretty radical at the time. It was considered kind of a radical step because, you know, here is, you know, it was also, we have to remember, in 1986 when it premiered in New York City Opera. In 84, it was the Jesse Jackson presidential campaign, and Farrakhan provided the security for Jesse Jackson. So there's a whole other thing, you know, it's like a very volatile time, I mean, in terms of race relations.
The New York Times covered the premiere in September of 1986, noting that 2,800 people turned out on opening night, many of whom felt such an opera presented what they called a statement, an idea that echoed in the paper's official review, which characterized the show as, quote, message theater. By definition, its message will not appeal to all who hear it. After its premiere, support waned until more than 3 decades later, when a nationwide thirst for equity awakened.
We see that awakening of the arts institutions to particularly African-American culture after George Floyd, you know, with what happened with George Floyd, it created a new environment.
Where a primary Black ensemble could headline an opera across the country.
When Detroit first ventured into Omaha, and Seattle were the first to jump on board.
And then the New York Met called.
Really amazing, and really created an X for our time.
As for the Seattle variation, Davis says he had a melting pot of inspiration. From Seattle's own Jimi Hendrix to the melodic complexities of Miles Davis, bending the perception of this typical European art form to tell the story of one of America's most influential and controversial leaders.
His father's murder, his father's death, you know, and then his mother being institutionalized, and then his troubled childhood he had in Lansing, then coming to Boston, and then, you know, getting involved with crime and being a hustler and a pimp in Boston, and then going to prison, and then converting to the Nation of Islam. So the story is so compelling.
All of it unraveling under theater lights, even the rise and fall of his relationship with his once mentor, Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad.
Even though Elijah Muhammad was the leader of the nation, but there was always a conflict and jealousy about that too.
What do you want your audience to take away from this?
Well, I want them to have an emotional experience. Music is emotional, and what I'm trying to create is create this empathetic place where you imagine yourself as Malcolm, whether you're white or black. You can identify with this person. His message is still valid, and it still inspires us now.
X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, has 4 more shows this Friday and Saturday, next Wednesday and Saturday at McCall Hall. To buy tickets, head on over to our website, fox13seattle.com.